Where's my spiel? Where are we?
Is this all getting edited out now?
Oh, yeah. No, I'll leave it in.
Leave it in.
I could have a bit at the start of the podcast, obviously, so I might leave this in, yeah.
This is the pre-show started before the theme, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Where you fumble a lot. Yeah. Welcome to the Side Foot Pass podcast. I'm Adrian over and co-host Mike. Wait, it says he's on assignment this week. I've got Jack here instead. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Aid.
Normally we host a weekly football show, sharing our insights and opinions with special guests throughout the season. In this week's episode, we go over some key matches from last week, see how our predictions fared, and we discuss our predictions for all the matches coming up in week 4 of the Premier League season. So, Jack, first time as a guest. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Adrian. Thank you for having me on the show. Very excited to be here and talk about the football, and what a wonderful week in the Premier League to discuss. So, yeah, very excited.
Very good. Like usual, we go over some key matches from the previous week. Well, we're going to go... I wish Mike was here, because maybe this is why he isn't here this week, because Everton lost. Maybe he didn't want to own up to the fact. But it was the Villa and Everton game. It ended up Aston Villa 2, Everton 0. I had a couple of points where Villa did, in my opinion, quite well. Even, it is the team I support, but I thought they did quite well in this. They didn't have much of the ball, but they did have 3 shots on target, which it's not a lot, but compared with the other games that I've looked at, to be honest, it's kind of on par. The main talking point for me was Everton's side is they only had 1 shot on target, but had 65% of the ball, which is not the best. But I know a couple of the shots, there was like a goal line clearance, which was like nail biting stuff, and there was also a Mings sliding tackle to also pretty much stop a goal, so it could have been 2-2. The weird thing for me was the Keane and Iwobi didn't start, which seems peculiar, as in we're 3rd week in and they're not starting their brand new signings that have cost them a lot of money, Jack.
Yeah, completely. I think Everton started with Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front, which wasn't too surprising. I think early on in the season, I can understand Moise Keane maybe not starting based on fitness and adapting to the Premier League. So Everton might just want a bit more time in training to get him up to speed. In terms of Iwobi, I'm a little bit unsure, because you'd think that he'd add something to that Arsenal midfield, certainly going forward, as well as an attacking influence. I thought Everton created a lot of chances. Obviously, not having the highest quality striker on the pitch available to them did set them back. 12 shots in total with 1 on target. It's not what you want to be seen if you're an Everton fan on game day 3. So, yeah, Everton created a lot of chances. Villa sat back and defended, but contained the pressure pretty well. And I thought Mings had an excellent game again. A great finish from El Ghazi at the end, just to kind of top it all off to make it 2-0. It was a bit nervous. If you're a Villa fan, I can understand, but I don't think Everton were any great shakes this week, and they don't seem to have too much attacking threat going forward currently.
I think the attacking threat that they left on the bench, I think Keane came on in the 60-odd minute. You don't give him enough time to... Maybe it's the match fitness thing that he's just really unsure that he's going to do the full 90, but if you're going to have your top goal scorer, well, in theory, will be the top goal scorer on the bench to start, and you need to win these initial games, and you think that for Everton, Villa should be an easier game.
Yeah, it should be.
That you'd put them on and you try and go, right, get a couple in, and then you can come back off if you're not fit. But it didn't even do that, so it's a bit surprising. And up to this point, Everton were the only team not to concede a goal.
Yeah, and they didn't show much attacking threat in the other games as well, really. I mean, they've played good football. They played well against Palace in the 0-0 draw, and were very, very unlucky. Just some resolute defending from Palace. I can understand with the Keane, because you think in terms of Italian football, he's played at Juventus, so that as a league is much slower than the Premier League. So adapting to that pace, he is going to need time, unfortunately, for Everton fans. As I say, I think Everton, they were good on the night. They created lots of chances, but Villa just took theirs, 7 shots and 3 on target. And Wesley gets his first goal. That's obviously got to be a nice feeling for yourself, being a Villa fan. It's nice to see him off the mark, and Villa scoring in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely, and he really enjoyed it as well. He went absolutely mental and ran towards the fans. So I think it's also a bit of relief that he comes over 20 mil and he was yet to make an impact, and he definitely made an impact with that, and then hopefully he'll do as well this year. And I'm looking for a mid-table for Villa. So, but I did see, I think last week I voted in a poll through our Twitter account, Sidefoot Pass Pod, if anyone wants to follow. It was that who are going to go into the top six, and Everton were on that list. But I know that Mike would definitely want that, and Matt, one of our other guests, will also want that because they're both Everton fans. But I'm quite apprehensive that they'll get it this year with the way that they are. But interesting match, nevertheless.
I think Everton are obviously becoming a very attacking side, and they played well against Watford, just created and finished the chance from Bernard. But Watford haven't looked great either. But Everton, for the start to the season that they've had, they've dropped 5 points. They've drawn with Palace, and they've now lost to Aston Villa. So you'd think that they would have been hoping for 9 points out of a possible nine. So it's potentially a disappointing start for Everton fans result wise, but performance wise, I don't think there's too much to be concerned about. It's got to feel nice for Villa to get off the mark with 3 points as well. You've had a difficult start, and I think a lot of people expected you to do something against Bournemouth, but I think you could be, after that performance and looking at how well you defended, especially players like Mings at the back, you can be looking at a mid-table finish quite easily. The way that you've played and started the season, you've been organised at the back and attacking enough and expressive enough on the ball to create a lot of chances. So I think you'll do well this year.
Yeah, and I think for 130 mil, you definitely need to stay in the Premier League, don't you? Right. Yeah. Moving on to Manchester United versus Crystal Palace, an interesting one last week where Man United eventually lost 2-1. Interesting one, Jack.
Yeah, this is a great result. Being a Liverpool fan, it's always nice to see Manchester United dropping points. I thought it was. I thought United played pretty well. I'm not entirely convinced by the start to the season. I thought the opening day of the season against Chelsea, the result flattered them. There's been a little bit of controversy over the penalties, which I'm sure you'll want to talk about. But first of all, I'd just kind of like to express the racist abuse that Pogba and Rashford have received is not on in the modern game at all, and should be condemned completely. So those fans, hopefully, they never get to see Manchester United play again. But to lose to Crystal Palace, who haven't registered anything really this season and haven't looked like a threat, it's a great finish from Van Arnold at the end. I think De Gea is quite suspect in that, but I'm interested to hear your opinion on this, Aid.
I thought Palace did pretty well. That they took their chances when they got it. They were Jordan Ayew played really well. His goal was over the top ball, really composed, slotted it home, and throughout the game he was getting the ball, waiting for people to make their runs. He would just hold the play and make the structure go around him because he was the sole target man striker in that formation. So they took the chances when they were made. They weren't rushing their counter attacks and just slamming it outside the box, hoping for the best. So
Palace were very composed. I don't think Lindelof covers himself in glory for the first goal for Ayew's finish. It's a great finish, and he's a striker. That's what he's there to do. But he shouldn't be allowed that time and space. So defensively for Man United to lose, to not win the first ball and then to not win the second, they'll be very disappointed to concede a goal like that. The second one speaks for itself. The goalkeeper beaten at the near post. There is some controversy that I'm interested to gauge your reaction on in regards to the Martial penalty. Should that have been given? Was he held back? And your opinion on the Rashford penalty as well. Who takes penalties for Manchester United moving forward?
I think penalty wise, I feel really sorry that he missed, but it was a pelting penalty. It wasn't really placed, was it? He just smashed it as hard as he could. Uh, I think either of them could take the penalties. I think it's just a case of obviously they're multi-million-pound strikers that they're definitely going to score. it's always the confidence thing, isn't it? Because penalty, really, it's not very far away from the goal. You should be scoring them all the time.
From 12 yards, Rashford should be hitting the target. To be honest, I think in order to defend the player, I think it's a great penalty. The placement is almost perfect. The power's perfect. He physically can't do any more than that to score than he has done. He's just unlucky that there's a couple of inches that have dictated that it's bounced off the post and not gone in the back of the net. And you look, if United go on and score that, they probably go on and win the game by quite comfortably. And Daniel James looks really impressive for Manchester United. I think for £15 million, they've got themselves a gem of a player there.
Yeah, the only thing about that match I didn't like, and the previous match, he's dived twice now, which I don't like to see at all. I mean, yes, he had a really good goal in that game, although it was the 89th minute. I'm glad that the referees are noticing it and are giving yellow cards. So you also wouldn't do that type of thing now, considering how much VAR there is going on. But like you said, the held back situation for a possible penalty. I personally thought it was a penalty. What's your opinion on that?
I would agree. I think if you're making contact in the box, then you've always got to be careful. I think you're going to see this season, especially with the introduction of VAR, which I am in favour of, by the way. But I think you're going to see a lot of penalties given for shirt pulling in the box from corners, from free kicks. There's going to be a lot of decisions across the season, but you'd hope that it would all space itself out. I think VAR ensures fairness in the game as much as reasonably controllable. United, they looked good on the weekend. They looked impressive. They were attacking. They couldn't get many shots on target, but I think in terms of the decisions, you could argue that they should have had another penalty for the Martial incident. But I think Palace overall quite reserved in the play, quite expressive going forward, and took their chances when they needed to. So they've came away with 3 points, and they all overall, I'd say it was deserved.
Right, we'll move on to the other key match. Well, from our research, really, was the Tottenham Newcastle game. A terrible week for Tottenham, losing 1-0 to Newcastle, but a great week for Newcastle, who looked strong when they needed to be, defended really well. But the possession stats on this were, I think, probably the worst I can remember anyway. So Tottenham had 80% of the ball. Newcastle had 20%. But with that 20%, they managed to have 8 shots, 3 on target. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, Newcastle did what they needed to do. They went away from home in a difficult place to go. Playing Tottenham away from home is always going to be a difficult fixture. Newcastle were very reserved, very defensive, very tactically set. And I actually think this is a really big win for Steve Bruce. I've got to commend Paul Dummett because at the back I thought he was fantastic. Tottenham were knocking on the door all game, but Newcastle actually kept them at arm's length to the point where it was a lot of just passes around the box and in the final third without kind of a lot of it was pot shots and actually if you look at Tottenham, the substitutions they made probably at the wrong time. Lo Celso is going to take time to fit into that team. It looks like Eriksen could be going this summer abroad. So I think Spurs, at this point, I don't think they've played well all season, in the first 3 games especially. And Dombele's been the bright spark for me. I think he's played really well when he's featured. Lamella has also played really well. But Spurs, they were knocking at the door. I think if that game goes on for much longer, then you probably see an equaliser at some point. And again, there's VAR controversy, which I'm interested to see what you think about the Harry Kane penalty. Should that have been given or
Looking at the several highlights of every different angle, to me, it could be viewed as he tripped and kind of Superman dived into Kane's path to ensure that he did fall over. It wasn't given, but I think depending on where you are as the ref and then the VAR looking at it, whether he tripped and then knocked over Kane or he purposely pretended to trip and knocked over Kane, to me it was still a penalty because he knocked him over in the box. They didn't touch the ball. What do you think?
I think Kane's been unfortunate here because there have been a couple of times now for Tottenham where late on in games they need a result and he has gone down lightly. So Kane may fall short because of a reputation now for going down in the box. But I personally think that I've seen them given. We've all seen them given in the Premier League and at the highest point in the game. Personally, I'd like to agree that it's a penalty. I can also see why it might not be. You think that these players are running at high momentum, high speed. Any shift, any shift in that momentum and speed can cause them to fall. And Lascelles has gone down. Looks like he's gone into Kane. I think at the pace that game's being played, there's no way that that's deliberate. It looks accidental. The referee's made the call that he doesn't think it's a penalty. I think Kane makes it look like there's more contact than there is. And VAR, it's important to mention that VAR is only introduced when they believe the referee's made a clear and obvious error. And if that's not a clear and obvious error in their mind, then it shouldn't be given. So we can dispute VAR all we like, but last week Tottenham will have been fans of it because it kept them a point in the league against Man City. This week they've fallen victim. These things will iron themselves out over the season.
Yeah, I agree. And I think because even we disagree here, in the room where they're looking at the replays, they are also going to disagree. And I'm not sure what the regulation in is. They've all got to agree, or they've all, it's a majority. I'm not sure, but you can see even just us looking at the same video, we have different opinions. So I can't imagine it's an easy job for them either way. So
VAR is a subjective system. It's not like goal line technology where it's either it's black and white, it's yes or no. Has the ball crossed the line? Yes, it has, then it's a goal. If it's not, then it's not. VAR is different because it's clear and obvious mistakes on the referee's behalf that can impact the game to a drastic level. Therefore, you'd kind of look at it, and if you've got 10 people in the room, I believe the system is it's the majority decision will can influence a decision to therefore inform the referee and say you might need to take a look at this. You may have missed something. So VAR, it's important to mention that you could have 10 people in the room and 6 people might think it's a penalty and 4 will obviously see it different. So I think any decision that you're going to get in the Premier League is going to be scrutinised because people aren't a fan of VAR to start with. It's never going to be 100% accurate. It's going to be 99 as much as it can possibly be. And we look at the controversy from last week that Tottenham were involved in. That isn't an issue with VAR. That's an issue with the new handball rule that's been introduced. So there are some things that will contribute to decision making and how we all perceive VAR and its impact this season.
yeah, I agree.
Well, personally, I'd like to talk about the Liverpool game, being a fan of the Anfield side. So Liverpool defeated Arsenal 3-1. A very dominant performance in parts. Arsenal also looked great attacking, but Liverpool just contained them and kept a lot of the ball, kept a lot of possession, and finished their chances when they needed to. So Mohamed Salah was obviously awarded king of the match by the Premier League, and Joel Matip also popping up with a goal, which is nice to see. It's an important win for Liverpool, so they're now on 9 points out of a possible 9. The perfect start to the Premier League, which is what any Liverpool fan would have asked for. So yeah, I'm really happy, but also I think it's important to cover the Chelsea game. So they picked up their first 3 points under Frank Lampard. Wasn't the best performance, but youngsters Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham came and delivered the goods. So two for the future there, and Chelsea looking stronger every week. I think they at parts Norwich could have exposed a couple of weaknesses at the back. I don't think Chelsea are fully defensively settled yet, and Lampard's got a lot of work to do with the system. But players like Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham, interested to see how you feel about them because they could be potential candidates for the international break and England starts in the future. What would your opinion be on that?
I think Mason Mount, I think he's 20 years old. He looks, because he was with Derby City with Frank last season. He obviously knows how he plays and he knows how good he is. So I like that he's been put in this Chelsea side and he's got 2 goals out of it already, I believe.
Yeah, 2 goals in 3 games so far, and he's contributed with an assist as well, I believe. So Mason Mount looks like he's got a look of a young Frank Lampard there with the potential. He's popping up with the goals. He finds himself in those pockets of space in the final third. Chelsea can't really ask for much more from a youngster at 20 years of age. to come into that side and to contribute with 2 goals in 3 games that have got them points in the league. I think he's done a great job so far.
Abraham obviously was with Villa last year. He's gone from Championship to Premier League. This game, he looked really strong. Where the other ones, he's trying to bed in of, where do I fit in this team? Am I supposed to be the target man like Giroud should be, or am I supposed to do something else? But I think because he is the target man because he's quite tall, but he's so agile. He's got good acceleration, and he's definitely got a good right foot on him. I think he will be a regular first team if he can keep that kind of composure and getting other people involved in the game. So I think it'll be quite interesting. I really look forward to the rest of the games and hope to see. I like to see youngsters play well and not just be loaned out until the team think they're good enough and just shove them on. Although Abraham, yes, was loaned out. So
Well, the loan benefited you last season with I think it was
yeah, it definitely did.
5 goals in the league. But yeah, it's nice to see youngsters coming into the Premier League sides and not just the likes of Bournemouth and Watford. It's nice to see them playing and given creative freedom within midfields or attacks, even defence, amongst the elite, the top 6. So yeah, Chelsea. I think Lampard will benefit from the transfer ban because he'll potentially be given more time to work with the youngsters and therefore a bit more patience from the fans and from key stakeholders at the club. They're going to obviously know that it's a long-term project for Chelsea, and they're going to be in a transitional period for a couple of years now. I'll be interested to see how they get on in the Champions League, but the group draws not far away now, so we'll find out who Chelsea and other clubs in England will be playing in Europe. But for the likes of Abraham and Mount, this is valuable experience at the highest level of the game. So to be cropping up with 2 goals each, and for Abraham especially the finishes, he can take a lot of confidence into the next couple of games now.
Well, I think that wraps up last week. So we move into week 4 of the Premier League season. We start off on Saturday, 31st of August. We'll start with a 12:30 kickoff at St Mary's Stadium on BT Sport. It's Southampton v Man United. So we covered the Man United game a little bit just. They kind of did dominate the play, but they only had 3 on target. So going into this one, that they had a loss. They need to push forward and hit a lot more. And they need to test the goalkeeper. I think Southampton for them is going to be a bit of a challenge, as in because they couldn't do enough in their last game. Are they going to struggle at home against Southampton, who they did beat Brighton last week? Even okay, Brighton had 10 men, which obviously would have helped them out, but at the end it was an even game. Do you think this would be an even game with Man United being a bit, I don't know, scared to push themselves forward?
I don't think United will suffer from any confidence issues against Southampton. Southampton are a good side. They've got 3 points this season. They've beaten Brighton. They came close to getting an equaliser against Liverpool. So that could have been a 2-2 draw. So we'd all be saying a lot different should they have got a draw there. I can see Manchester United quite easily settling into this game. They've got the quality to overpower Southampton and to stifle their midfield and defence. I personally can't see anything but a Manchester United win, as much as that pains me to say it. I think United have looked pretty strong, suspect in certain areas, and I'm not entirely convinced by the defence. But if I was a Manchester United fan, I'd be very confident going into this game, even away from home.
Yeah, I'm going with a kind of a reserve thing. I'm not going for either, so I'm going for a 1-1 draw on this particular game. What would you go for?
I'm going to go all out and say Manchester United 3, Southampton 0.
3-0.
So I can just see Southampton attacking and pressing quite early on, but United just biding their time, being patient in the play, and just working their way through and scoring a couple of goals. I can see Rashford on the score sheet again. So I think they'll pick up the points this weekend, no problem.
Okay, the first of the 3:00 kickoffs: Chelsea v Sheffield United at Stamford Bridge. We already spoke about the Abraham 2 goals. He got his first in the Premier League. They did have 23 shots, 8 on target last time round. I think they looked a lot stronger, as we've already discussed. And Sheffield United, they did lose against Leicester last week, although it was an even game. I mean, 8 shots overall, 3 on target. I personally can't see Sheffield United winning this, even if it was at their home ground. It's an away fixture, but I don't see at the moment Chelsea scoring lots of goals. I'd go for maybe a 1-0 win to Chelsea.
I can actually see Chelsea it being a low scoring game, but Chelsea walking away with the 3 points. So Sheffield United have looked pretty strong this season, and it's nice to see Ollie McBurney getting a goal early on in his career there. So I think Sheffield United have been quite expressive and quite expansive amongst their play, being quite attacking in the games, and I think they might offer Chelsea a couple of problems that no one really expects. So I would say Chelsea 2, Sheffield United 1. Can see Sheffield creating chances, and I don't think Chelsea are necessarily great defensively yet. So Lampard has a lot to work on the system, but I think they'll just get the better of Sheffield.
Don't think these teams have ever met in the Premier League. Maybe about 10, 12 years ago, maybe. But
About 12 years ago now. 06-07 was Sheffield United's last season in the Premier League. So
if you move on to Crystal Palace versus Aston Villa at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace, they did take their chances and win against Man U last week, and Villa also beat Everton. So they both had not a lot of the ball against their opponents, but both came out with a win. Personally, as a Villa supporter, I would always try and put them forward, and I think with this one, they might edge it. I think there'll be a few goals in it. With, I want to say Wesley scoring again, but I think I'm gearing towards a 2-1 to Villa, but it is at Crystal Palace, so I'm unsure. I'm going to go for a 2-1 at the moment, unless you could swear me otherwise, Jack.
I'm going to go slightly different to you. So my mode of thinking would be that Crystal Palace and Villa are quite evenly matched. Obviously, the quality of Zaha shines through in Palace's squad, but Villa have recruited well. I think they've actually looked really promising this season, and the win against Everton is the highlight so far. But they've played well against Tottenham and against Bournemouth. They've been unlucky. Palace have also started pretty well and coming off the back of a good win against Manchester United. I would say 2-2. I think both sides aren't really gonna look to defend that much. They're gonna commit to attacking and trying to get goals. I can see Christian Benteke scoring his first goal in a while, just to haunt the Villa, and I can see Wesley on the score sheet again. Maybe Grealish popping up with a goal, so that'd be nice for the Villa fans. I think 2-2. I think both sides are quite evenly matched, so I'm therefore going for a draw.
Yeah, I think that's also possible. I mean, we'd only be 1 goal out, but I can't see 4 goals in a game with them two. But we'll see. We'll see.
This is where it goes crazy, and Crystal Palace win 5-0.
Will I give you a text going, what?
Yeah, I'm expecting the text already.
Right, so another 3 o'clock kickoff is Leicester versus Bournemouth at King Power Stadium in Leicester. So Leicester did beat Sheffield United last week. Maddison was another great, strong game. I think I mentioned him last week to say he's their key player, he's the playmaker, and he definitely was last match. He was strong in that midfield area. They had 10 shots, 2 on target, which isn't great. I think they definitely want to improve that kind of target ratio for this match. And then Bournemouth, they lost against Man City. They had a decent amount of shots compared to the possession and a lot on target. They only had 26% of the ball, but had 10 shots, 7 on target. And 7 on target is, I think, more than nearly as much as Chelsea had with 23 shots. So it puts it into perspective that they can hit the target. So I think with this one, I don't know. I've put a score down here, but now I'm changing my mind. Let me hear what you think first.
So I think both teams look pretty strong. Bournemouth offered City a couple of problems early on in the game over the weekend, and Leicester have looked promising again at the start of this season. I think under Rodgers they've recruited well. They've signed Tielemans on a permanent. Perez is obviously going to be a bright spark all season and going to offer them a lot of goals and attacking influence. Leicester have some key players, like you've mentioned. Maddison is the real bright spark in that squad, but Jamie Vardy can find the target. and can score goals and has done consistently every season since Leicester won the league. Harvey Barnes is promising as well. I can see Leicester finding the back of the net a couple of times. Bournemouth may be offering a couple of problems, but I think Leicester will overrule them. I can see Leicester 3, Bournemouth 1.
Very nice. I'm going for a 2-0 to Leicester. That's what I had originally, and I'm going to keep it that way. But although Bournemouth last week, they did have quite a few on target, I don't know. I don't see them scoring away, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. But I think it'll be a good game either way. They are quite evenly balanced, and I think they both like attacking football. So another 3:00. It is Man City versus Brighton at the Etihad Stadium, where Man City had 74% of the ball against Bournemouth, and they did beat them very handsomely. But they had 19 shots, 5 on target. Again, I think last week they're in their 30s and had 10 on target. So their percentage on target slowly increasing. But I'd be wanting more on target. You need to pepper the goal, especially because they create so many chances. I think they just want maybe wonder goals all the time, Man City.
City quite often try and score the perfect goal, and quite often do. And they score a lot of very aesthetically pleasing goals and some real bangers in the league. Sterling looks great again this season. I think he's found himself on 5 goals already. And Bernardo Silva, you've got the attacking influences in that team. Their depth is unreal. Look at who Man City have at their disposal. Obviously, Sane's out injured, but if it's not Sterling and Mahrez, then they can bring Jesus into the fold. And if it's not Jesus, Aguero's in the team. So they've got a lot of attacking options, and I think City will be dominant all season. They'll win most of their games. I can't see them dropping many points. Brighton have found themselves on 4 points, which is a relatively good start for them. Beating Watford quite strongly on the opening game of the season took us all by surprise. I don't think any of us were expecting that result, and they've looked pretty good at parts, but I think City's quality is too much for most teams in the league now. So I would hazard a guess at Manchester City 5, Brighton 0.
5-0. Wow. The Brighton game last week, I think it ruined because Adone got that really vicious red card. I don't know whether you saw it. It was pretty horrible. He just kind of just smashed his leg into him. No, it really set them up for the loss, and that's obviously not what you want. But it also showed how strong they are, that it was still an even game, even with them having 10 men. They still were able to keep about 50-50 possession and managed to do several shots on target. So I'm going for a 4-1 to Man City on this one. I do think Brighton will maybe get a corner and smash a header in. But I don't see them beating Man City.
I think City are quite strong from set pieces defensively, and especially Ederson in goal is a contender for the best goalkeeper in the world. Obviously, I'd like to say that Alisson is, but Brazil is probably the unluckiest goalkeeper that he's just got someone slightly better than him, because he's otherwise he's the number 1 in any team he plays in. I think City are very strong at the back, and I don't think Brighton will offer too much. So I think that justifies the 5-0.
So the penultimate 3 p.m. kickoff is Newcastle versus Watford at St James's Park. At least it's not Sports Direct Stadium. Oh, Christ. So Newcastle, they beat Spurs on 20% of the ball. Amazing. They took the chances when they were offered to them last week. I think they'll get more chances this time because it's against Watford. They did look stronger, and I feel that they could maybe win this one, but I'm not sure. Where Watford, they lost against West Ham, but they had 23 shots, 3 on target, which 20 shots off target in a game is not great, really. They kept lots of long range shots, so I think they just weren't working it into the box enough, and they just kept trying to hit it on target outside the box, where unless you're Man City, it's probably not going to work all the time. The back four didn't particularly have a good game, in my opinion. I I would go with these two teams, even though Newcastle did beat Spurs last week. I think it's going to be a different kind of game. They're not going to be as defensive, so they'll be a bit more, maybe two up front. I still think it'd be a 0-0 draw myself. What do you think?
I can see this being a very tight affair between the two. Newcastle coming off the back of a great win against Spurs without having much of the ball. Look like they might set up to defend a lot of this season and try and just take teams on the break. Obviously, the influence Joel Linton has on that attack might contribute to a couple of goals against Watford, who have looked suspect at the back. I don't think Watford have looked great this season. They've got no points. Newcastle have 3. I can see there's not much to tear these teams apart. So I'm going to say a 1-1.
Both a draw, just with and without goals. So the last 3 o'clock kickoff is West Ham versus Norwich at the London Stadium. Last week, Haller got his first goal and also scored 2 in that same match for West Ham. They had a high number of shots on target. I think it was probably the most in everyone all week. I think they had 10 on target, which is pretty high compared to everyone else, especially I think Everton had 1. Sorry to go back to Everton. Sorry, Mike. But they look strong and a lot stronger this week. And I think they have got more gelled together since week 1 and week 2, where Norwich, they were also played, pretty well last week. They were unfortunate to lose, maybe, but Pookie is playing a blinder at the moment. He's top goal scorer in the whole league at the moment, maybe, I think.
Yeah, he's scored the most. I think he's level with Sterling now. So, but what a start for a Norwich player as well.
Yeah, I mean, the passion and the enthusiasm's there, and it's great to see. And I hope, I've said it with Mike before, like Norwich, Sheffield, Brighton, just to the passion and we really want to win it now. We deserve to be in the Premier League is really apparent, and it's really good to see.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's amazing when you get clubs that don't necessarily have the long love affair with the Premier League that clubs like Aston Villa and Newcastle have to an extent. It's nice to see the passion in the smaller teams. Bournemouth have a stadium of about 14,000 people, and that's you get a great atmosphere every week. Norwich, I think, are a very have looked really strong this season. I think they've played really good football. Pookie looks the bright spark in that team, and Buendia as well looks good. They've got a lot of youth in that team as well, and they've invested slightly within the squad. West Ham also looks strong. Talking about Haller scoring 2 goals, there's no better way to open your account at a club than an overhead kick, is there? So he also looks great. West Ham look pretty good. I think Norwich might actually surprise a few this season. They've came pretty close against Chelsea. Liverpool were too good for them, but they dominated Newcastle. So I think we might see a couple of surprise results. I think this weekend might be one of them. I'm going West Ham 1, Norwich 3. Pookie double.
Pookie double. Get him in your fantasy football right now.
He's in mine. That's why I'm winning in the league.
Yeah, I'm going for opposite result, really. I'll go for 2-1 West Ham. So I feel the look they had last week, they are eager to score more. And I think now that Haller's got off the mark, and yes, his overhead was for his second goal was pretty nice. I mean, everyone thought, well, he's facing the wrong way. And then suddenly smashed it home. It was great to see.
It's nice to see a striker open his account, and it justifies the price tag that he's came in for as well. West Ham looking better every week. Obviously, they can't have looked much worse than they did against Man City, but got a decent draw on week 2. So yeah, I think they might offer something, but I can see Norwich really surprising a few this season.
And the last fixture of Saturday is live on Sky Sports at 5:30. Is Burnley versus Liverpool at Turf Moor in Burnley. So we've got last week. So Burnley, they drew against Wolves. They lost the ball quite a lot, and I think they got frustrated. And there were so many fouls outside of the box where I think the whole game, Wolves, in my opinion, should have should have probably edged it and won, but Burnley only had 35% of the ball, 30 shots for on target. I think Liverpool obviously had a great start. They've got, you can probably tell me all the stats, but I think they're unbeaten in 15 straight matches or something like that. And last week, you obviously beat Arsenal. Adrian always scared. Well, Adrian or Adrian. It's because my name's Adrian. It's quite confusing, but he really scares me at the moment. So there was a moment last week where he just started pelting out of the box, fluffed it, and they could have scored like a chip, and it didn't go in, did it? But I was just like, oh my, don't do it. So I know he's the sub goalie, but I suppose you're waiting for Allison to get back so he doesn't give you any heart palpitations.
I can't wait for Alison Becker to come back into the squad. There's no secret. I think he's the best goalkeeper in football. And Adrian coming into the team, I liked him at West Ham. I thought he was a very solid goalkeeper, always a good option to have. I believe that he's been brought in more for the impact he has in the dressing room, and he seems like a real character. It is a little bit frightening. The incident with Aubameyang was scary at the time, but you can kind of look back and laugh knowing the result in the end. Liverpool have looked good this season. We're obviously the home record speaks for itself, unbeaten in nearly 2 years in the Premier League now. I think it might be over 2 years actually. Burnley always seem to be a side that offer us a few problems early on, but we eventually overcome the odds to get the result. So I can see Ashley Barnes, who's on 4 goals this season, made a great start, scored a great goal against Wolves last week. I can see him having a big impact, maybe giving Liverpool a few scares, but I don't think Liverpool have looked great defensively necessarily this season. I think we might have a bit too much for Burnley overall. So I'm going to agree, and I'm going to go 3-1 Liverpool win.
Oh, because I'm going for a 3-1 Liverpool win as well. Wow. Well, we better both be right then. Yeah, I agree. Over the last, I think, five games that you've played against each other, you've always conceded a goal. So I think me and Mike have always, well, over the last couple of weeks have said that you always do look a bit suspect at the back. I mean, you've got that incredible attacking team, but then just now and again, that counter attack would just catch you unawares. And, they suddenly got a goal and they're like, right, we've got to go rigid again. Their formation changes and then they're suddenly back in their four. So, yeah, I think they'll definitely score Burnley. But yeah, I agree. Liverpool 3-1.
Burnley will be organised. Liverpool will be attacking. Maybe I think Liverpool might be a bit more patient this week as well, and not go for necessarily the early goal. But I think you might see a more a more defensively sound midfield, maybe a Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Milner, just to kind of shore up that and offer that solidity to the defence. Kind of have those players, just a workman-like midfield. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lallana feature as well, but that front three, I think, is too much quality for Burnley to handle. So 3-1 overall.
So we move on to Sunday, the 1st of September. We've got Everton versus Wolves at Goodison Park. So that's live on Sky Sports if you want to have a look. Last week, Everton lost to Villa, as we've already mentioned. And we've already mentioned that Keane and Iwobi didn't start. I think this week would definitely be their start because they need something out of this game, considering it's at home as well. All the fans, especially Matt, he'll be there and he'll be wanting them to definitely score and definitely win. But I'm not sure myself. They only had one on target last week, but maybe if Keane starts and he's raring to go, maybe that will increase. Wolves last week, they did draw against Burnley. They had 17 shots, only 2 on target. So I'm sure training ground this week they'll be working on finishing that ball in that net. But Jimenez looked great in my opinion. It may have been man of the match. I'm not entirely sure, but Wolves, in my opinion, will edge this, even though it's away from home. Maybe with a 2-1 win to Wolves. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. So Wolves haven't lost to Everton since they've came back into the Premier League. So obviously a 2-2 draw last season and a 3-1 away win at Goodison Park. I think Wolves have got a lot of quality, but this season they don't look like they've got enough to get over the line in certain games. The Burnley one was a real test of character. Burnley were very defensively sound. I think Everton will probably be the same and set up quite defensively, with well aware of the impact that Wolves forward line can have. Adama Traore looks like he's adapting to becoming a right wing back, and he's done that really well this season. Everton, I think they've looked okay this season. I don't think there's too much to write home about so far. It's so early on in the season that you can't really tell. I think we may see the introduction of Moise Keane. Certainly, I think we'll see the impact that Iwobi can have in that team, but I wouldn't be surprised to kind of either see a draw. Maybe Wolves might take it from the head to head, having not lost the last two. I'm going to go with tradition and go for Wolves, not Everton. Sorry, Mike and Matt. I'm going Wolves 2-0.
Right, the final game of week 4 of the Premier League is Arsenal versus Spurs at the Emirates Stadium at 4:30 on Sky Sports again. Last week, Arsenal lost, as you are well aware. But the one thing I want to talk about that game was David Luiz. I think it was the 8 mil signing for them this year. It was a really poor penalty giveaway. He just dragged the shirt, and I don't know what he was thinking. Really, like, I don't know how you get away with it, especially with VAR in now. You just let them go. They might score, they might not, but I'd never deliberately take someone down, especially with the penalties at the moment. And they only had one consolation goal at the end, and it was really scrappy 6-yard goal from what I remember. Where the Spurs game, they dominated the possession, 80% of the ball. So what was that? Nearly about 73 minutes of the ball they had. Can you imagine? 73 minutes. They couldn't beat Newcastle. They had 17 shots, 2 on target. So not enough shots on target for Spurs. Arsenal, they didn't look strong, but obviously they do have that threat up front from Aubameyang. I'm going to go for, they're both going to score. It's going to be a 1-1 draw.
I think you're not going to be far off the mark with that one. Arsenal, very good start to the season in the opening 2 games. Obviously, if you compare that with last season when they'd lost their first 2 games, they'll be quite happy with 6 points out of a possible 9. I think they've looked stronger attacking wise. Aubameyang is always a threat. Lacazette, I don't think, has featured enough and should feature a lot more within that team. Pepe looks a gem of a player. I think they may have overpaid on the transfer fee, but he looks like he could be the difference. Spurs, as I mentioned previously and earlier on in the podcast, they've not played very well this season. They've not started the season in the vein that they would have been hoping for, having already dropped 5 points. I think I can actually see Arsenal walking away with 3 points from this one. I'm going to go a 2-1 to Arsenal. I'm going Nicolas Pepe and Aubameyang to score.
Very specific there. I like it. So that rounds up week 4 predictions for the Premier League, which, like you've said already, Jack, I think it might be a week of, we put these predictions forward, it might be a week of surprises because there's so many games this week where they're against their relative opponent, that they play maybe similar games or they're on the same par, that, it could go one way or the other.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we're going to see there's a lot of teams here that can be great one week and not so great the next, and they seem to be playing each other. The games that I don't really fancy predicting, I never look at West Ham because they're so unpredictable in the league. They can be winning 3-0 one week and then get beaten 4-0 to Brighton the next. So they're always tough games to call. I think the toughest game this week is Everton Wolves because Everton they're a very good side and they do have a lot of positives in that team. Wolves also very, very attacking, but not necessarily great on the road. So I'm that one I think is very, very close to call. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Wolves walk away with 3 points and a 2-0 win like I've predicted, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Everton score a couple of goals as well and walk away with the 3 points. That and the Arsenal Spurs game, they're going to be difficult to predict because they're sides that haven't necessarily shown their full ability this early on in the season. So who knows what's to come in the Premier League? It's certainly an exciting week, and we will look back and discuss this at length next week, I guess.
Yeah, we definitely will. We'll move on to last week's prediction of me and Mike. I'll quickly go over them and I'll see what you may have predicted before you know the scores. But we had last week was Friday, the 23rd of August. It was Villa versus Everton. it was a 2-0 win to Everton. So I predicted a 2-1, and Mike had a 1-1. So I got a singular point out of that one. So were you surprised with that result? Did you think Everton should have won that?
I was very surprised with the result. I thought Everton. I think Everton are a really good side. Despite being a Liverpool fan, I admire the style of play and I admire the work that's going into that team. And the new stadium's going to look great as well. I actually think that I thought Everton would have quite easily beaten Villa, but Villa were resolute at home, strong at the back, and took the chances when they needed to be. I'd have perhaps gone for an Everton 1-0.
Yeah. The Saturday, the 24th of August, there was Norwich versus Chelsea. It ended up 3-2 to Chelsea. I predicted a 1-1 draw, and Mike predicted a 1-0 to Norwich. So both of us were incorrect on that one. So 0 points on that. So I think at the time he thought, well, I'll just go totally the opposite way, because Chelsea, up to last week, weren't having a good time. So I could see why we would have gone that conservative approach. So yeah, the moving on to the Brighton versus Southampton one at the Amex, it was 2-0 to Southampton. So I predicted 2-1 to Brighton, and Mike predicted a 1-0 to Brighton. So we're not having a good week so far. Both for 0 points on that one.
I'd have gone for a Southampton win. I'd have probably disagreed with you on that one there. I can see Southampton kind of struggling this season, but Brighton are again one of those sides that I mentioned that you never really know what you're going to get, what you're going to see until on the day. So
Yeah, I think it was because they were so impressive the last 2 weeks that we thought, well, we'll put a dab on that one. But yeah, not to come our way on that one. So it was next one was Man United versus Crystal Palace. It ended up 2-1 to Crystal Palace. So again, got it wrong, which I'm pretty sure anyone that put a bet on in real life would have got this wrong. We said 1-0 to Man United, and Mike said 2-0 to Man United, and both 0 points on that prediction. But yeah, I mean, we've already discussed it, but it was a surprising win for Crystal Palace in the end.
very surprising result. I think when you talk about the punters over the weekend, I think there's one very unlucky punter who actually had it as part of an accumulator, cashed out for £200, and it went on to win 98 grand. So yeah, you wouldn't be happy with that really. But Manchester United would have been on my bet this weekend. I don't think you'd have got great odds for it, but it's one of those where you kind of think the way that Palace have started the season, it's a surefire result for United. Didn't turn out to be that, but I was pleasantly surprised being a Liverpool fan that United dropped points again. So it's a nice result, but it's not expected.
So at the Sheffield United versus Leicester game, it ended 2-1 to Leicester. So I predicted a 3-2 win to Sheffield United. I think I picked that purely based on how much enthusiasm they had. So it didn't really work out for me. I got 0 points on that one. But Mike got a point out of this fixture. He said it would be a 2-0. So he got the result right, but he didn't get the score right. So he's a point up on that. The Bramall Lane game. Moving on to the next one was Watford versus West Ham. It ended up 3-1 to West Ham. Again, we didn't do well on this one either. We both got 0 points. So I predicted a 0-0 draw, and Mike thought it would be 1-0 to Watford. I think it was more for he loves Delafoni. So, but yeah, 0 points on that one. And then I was surprised we won on this one. So we had the Liverpool Arsenal game. It was 3-1 to Liverpool. I predicted a 2-1 to Liverpool, and Mike predicted a 3-1 to Liverpool. So he gets 3 points on that prediction, and I only get one. So would you have predicted a closer game maybe for that one? Would you have maybe gone for like a 2-1?
I personally had 3-0 in mind for Liverpool. I don't think we ever really struggle against Arsenal at Anfield. We seem to be one of those teams that they can't get a result against. We usually cruise to a victory. Firmino, it's the tradition that he normally gets a goal. Obviously, he didn't this week, but I expected us to beat Arsenal. Maybe because of the start of the season, my prediction would have changed to it being a closer game because they did start very well and have looked promising attackingly. So, yeah, I think 2-1, 3-1, they're both sound predictions. Obviously, Mike's done very well to get 3 points out of that.
Yeah, definitely. When I saw that, I got quite sad. But move on to the Sunday results, we had Man City winning 3-1 against Bournemouth. So we weren't far off both of these predictions. We both had the same result. We both said it would be 3-0 Man City. So we're only one goal off. So we both got a point for that. I think it could have been a lot more, but there we go. Man City. Mike always says City, City, and they just seem to just win week after week, which I think when Liverpool and City get their first Premier League game, that's going to be an interesting one.
It's going to be a very tight affair between Liverpool and City this season. Obviously, City have already dropped points, but that's against Tottenham. Liverpool have had a big test against Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal are as good as Spurs, despite what my prediction may have said earlier over the duration of a season. I'd have gone 4-0 to Man City, but that's my prediction for them every week because they seem to score 4 or 5 most weeks now. They're a great side. Possibly, you can make a case for them being one of the best Premier League teams of all time based on the points tally and the performances that they put in. But not just that, but they're probably the best team currently in world football, as much as that pains me to say it. So I'd have gone for a City victory, pretty clear. You're both very unlucky, just one Bournemouth goal away, and it is a goal of sheer class from Harry Wilson. Wouldn't have loaned him out personally, but it's nice to see him scoring against City. So doing Liverpool fans a slight favour there in the goal difference. But yeah, another good prediction, I guess.
Yeah, the next game for the Sunday was Tottenham versus Newcastle. Newcastle ended up winning 1-0, as we've already discussed, but I thought it'd be a 1-0 the other way to Tottenham. And Mike, crazily, he texted me after the match and he got it extremely wrong. He thought it'd be 5-1 to Tottenham. So, he got the one goal to Newcastle, I suppose, but the other side, not great. But I'm sure we'll have a bit more of a discussion with that with him next week. But the last game from last week was Wolves versus Burnley, and it ended up a 1-1 draw. I thought it'd be 3-1 Burnley, and he thought it'd be 0-0. So he gets a point out of that one, and I get a nil point on that one. I don't know why I thought Burnley were going to edge it. I think I just wanted to go the wrong way, even though it ended up a draw anyway. So Wolves did look like they should have won, to be honest, watching the game. So
Wolves played really well. Burnley defended really well. I'm not sure on your prediction, Aid.
yeah, it was a bit of a crazy prediction. I'm not going to lie.
Seems like you've had a rush of blood to the head there when you're predicting it. I'd have gone Wolves 2 or 3-0. I'd have thought they'd have had too much class for Burnley, but Burnley are a very defensive side, and Sean Dyche organises them well. So I don't think the 1-1 is surprising to see, but I think Wolves' start to the season, they won't be entirely convinced with, especially the point against Leicester and the point against Burnley. They will feel like they may have dropped points there. Point against United, they've got a great record at home against Man United. So I think that one was probably expected, but I don't think they've made the most convincing start results-wise. Performance-wise, I think they've done pretty well. So not surprised that Mike's had a really good week with predictions. Aid, not so much yourself, unfortunately.
Not really, no. I think last week I was pretty much one goal off every result, but this week has been a bit of a shock. I'm hoping next week's predictions is better. So, yeah, the overall result for this week was Mike got 7 points and I got a miserable 3, which is definitely not the one that you want. So we'll wrap up with an overview of our fantasy football league we've got, which we'll put some links out on Twitter for you to join if you like. If you've already got a Premier League fantasy football, it'll be on Twitter, which is SideFootPassPod, if you want to follow us. So, Jack, you're top of this league. We keep saying these Jack boys at the top of the league, and here you are, rinsing us.
188 points strong. Timu Puki has proved the difference. Delighted that I'm top of the league because I do actually put a lot of thought into my fantasy football. Usually give up around January when it all goes south, but no, excited to be top of the league. I think I've had a pretty good start on 188 points. Brett Bradley's in second place on 175. He's also made a good start, just 11 points behind.
Yeah, definitely. This week you had 67 points. There's been a couple of changes this week where David Hunt's moved over into third position with 149. Mike has gone down to fourth with 143 to only a few points in it now. But I've moved off the bottom above Matt, so that's pretty amazing. As long as Matt can stay at the bottom, that's perfectly fine with me. So I've moved up to 5th on 126, and there is only 3 points in it, Matt. I'm sorry, but it's 1, 2, 3. You only got 28 points this week, so not a good week for Matt.
I think Matt had used his triple captain this week on Harry Kane as well, so he's going to be disappointed with that. Unfortunate week for him, 28 points, not the greatest, but I think his side overall probably. He's got Wan-Bissaka in there, he's got Kane.
Wan-Bissaka got a yellow as well, so quite unfortunate, I would guess, on that one. But yeah, I don't expect him to stay at the bottom too long.
No, I expect you to be at the bottom personally, Aid. I'm sorry.
Oh no!
What can I say?
What a shocker! Right, so if you'd like to contact the show, please do so on Twitter. We are at SideFootPassPod. Subscribe to us now on Apple Podcast. We're also on Stitcher, Spotify, and Blueberry. We're also, if you've got none of these options, we are also now on YouTube. So if you type in SideFootPass Podcast, you will see us on there as well. So we're trying to spread out as much as we can to get as many people to listen. So if you've got any opinions, thoughts on the games, and you'd like to have your comment included, please get in touch. We'd always love to hear you. Just the last bit to say thank you very much to Jack for filling in my co-host position for Mike this week.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
We hope to have you on again soon, and thanks for your insight. And it's probably good that maybe Mike and Matt weren't here. I didn't want to scuffle on here being Liverpool and Everton. But
it's never going to go well on the first meeting, is it?
Not particularly, but they might hear your voice now, so they might be calmer now. But it's
I'm sure they'll bully me for sounding like a young boy. So
I mean, it's always good. I think whoever does get to guest on this show they're all going to be different supporters. They've all got different opinions, and it's always good to get a different aspect, or else. I'll speak about Villa a lot, or you would speak about Liverpool a lot. But it's good that we've got an overall view of everything. So it's good.
Football brings everyone together, fans across the world of any team, and we can all talk about football because we've all got a shared passion. So yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
All right. See you again.
See you again.